Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining the webinar. We're still waiting for some people to cycle in, but I'm going to go ahead and get started as more people filter in. So my name is Kelly Paisley. I'm CEO of the IT company, and our tagline is finding you the time you need by utilizing technology to increase efficiencies. We've been in business for 16 years, helping customers with digital adoption, and that most recently has become AI, which is what today's webinar is about. With me today, presenting are Dominic So, our tech strategy advisor, and Andrea Menamano, our operations manager. So a few housekeeping items before we get started. Chat has been disabled and everyone's mic and cameras have been turned off. We do have a Q&A session at the end of the demo. So if you have any questions, you should see a Q&A box at the top of your screen. Go ahead and type your questions in there, and we'll get to those when we get to the Q&A portion. Okay, so let's get started. Today, we're going to help build some awareness around AI and talk about what organizations can do to prepare for implementing it. AI is being incorporated into almost everything, and there's still a lot of uncertainty around AI systems. One of the main concerns that we hear is, will AI put me out of a job? And the response to that is AI will not replace you, but somebody using AI will. So it's really important for organizations to start embracing this technology now so they can stay competitive. So I'm going to go ahead and move into a little bit of education about AI, and then we're going to talk about what organizations need to do to prepare. And then Dom is going to do a quick demo on Microsoft 365 Copilot, which will show you just some of the capabilities of this tool. So I'd like to start off with some statistics. And here's some statistics on how AI is being used and what the projections are. So as we can see, 85% of business customer relationships are projected to be managed without human interaction by 2025. It is December 2024, so we're talking about a few short months until we're starting to see AI really ramp up and start doing a number of interactions. I'm sure a lot of you have already experienced the chatbots that are AI driven, whether you love them or you hate them, they're not going away, and hopefully they get a little bit more advanced than they are now. But we can see that this technology is starting to become ubiquitous across all industries. A statistic I want to point out here is that only 3 to 4% of small, medium-sized enterprises are actually using AI tools. So even though this technology is out there and we are seeing it everywhere, there's still a very small amount of small, medium enterprises who are reporting on using these tools. So we've all heard of the term BYOD, bring your own device. Well, there's a new term out now that is bring your own AI. And so what we're seeing is a number of staff are bringing these AI tools into organizations. And the statistic here I want to point out is the middle one. 3 out of 4 employees are bringing AI tools to work and keeping them secret from their bosses. And I want to zip back to the previous slide just so that we can reference the correlation there. We're seeing that 3 to 4% of small, medium-sized enterprises are reporting on using these tools, but 3 out of 4 employees are bringing them to work and keeping them secret from their bosses. So what we're seeing here is a dichotomy between what leadership knows is going on and what the staff is actually doing. So really important for leadership to start acknowledging these tools so that they can make sure that they're being implemented responsibly in organization. When people are bringing their own technology into an organization, and we saw with this challenge with bring your own device, there becomes a security concern and possibly an underutilization of that potential. So why are staff not telling leadership that they're using these tools? There's a number of reasons. First off, job security. Staff are concerned that if management finds out they're using AI tools to do a portion of their job, that management might deem that employee as no longer useful if they can get an AI tool to do it. The second reason is a lack of trust or fear of reprimand. We see this in organizations, and there's still a lot of resistance to AI from some people in certain cultures where they're either not seeing the benefit or they just don't want to accept it because of what it means to them. So we're seeing staff who maybe are a little bit more progressive and early adopters seeing the benefit of these tools, but not wanting their bosses to find out because they're worried the boss might be mad at them for using that tool. Another factor we're seeing is a perceived lack of understanding or cultural resistance, where maybe ownership just doesn't understand the tool, or maybe the culture, because most things come top down, leadership is speaking negatively about these tools. And so the staff member is perceiving that as this is just not something welcome in this culture. And the difficulty for them is they, again, see how much this tool is doing for them. And so they want to use it to do their job better, but they're worried that the culture is not going to accept that. And finally, we see a lack of clear policies. In some cases, the staff just aren't sure what the ownership thinks about it or what the culture's like, and so they're not telling anybody that they're using it, just staying under the radar. So here's the trend of IT, and I did this little diagram just to make an analogy for everybody of where you sit on this timeline. Traditionally, we have something called rule-based systems. Pre-pandemic, before AI, ChatGPT, Copilot came out, this is mostly what we were dealing with. Systems that use if-then statements. You put in an input, you get a pre-programmed output. Digital assistants like large language models, ChatGPT, Copilot, these go a step further in that they're taking a query that you're putting in, they're analyzing that, and then they're generating an output based on the contextual input. Coming up very soon is something called functional AI. Now, functional AI is a system that can learn from experience and adapt to new situations, which makes them more flexible and more powerful. And to give you an example, what we see today with digital assistants, if you wanted to book a vacation, for example, you could put in, I want to go on a beach vacation on these dates, and I want to do some hiking and have really good food. And it will come back and recommend to you maybe Mexico and say, here's some resorts that you might want to look at. It's 5-star resorts, good food. There's some tours available, some excursions you can book. Functional AI will go a step further, where you'll tell it the same input and it will go ahead and book that vacation for you based on what it knows about you, what your preferences are, and it will go ahead and take care of that, so that all you have to do is say, this is what I want to do on these dates. Functional AI, obviously very powerful, creates some more concerns there, because to do something like that, it now needs access to your passport information, your credit card information, etc. So security becomes more of a concern when functional AI comes out. But the point I'm trying to illustrate here is, if you're still using rule-based systems and you're not using digital assistants, you're essentially taking a horse and carriage for your commute to work versus a car. And coming up very soon, the functional AI, where you're going to be speeding to work in a little flying car. If you're not adopting digital assistants now, it's going to be even harder to catch up when the functional AI component comes out. Now, some people I've talked to are projecting that to be within 2 years. We're going to start seeing functional AI. We're already starting to see some examples of that. I was in Phoenix recently, and they have Waymo cars, which are self-driving cars. There's no driver at all. You just get in the car, tell it where you want it to go, and it takes you there. So we're already seeing this technology starting to become prevalent. So what is AI? Artificial intelligence refers to the simulation of human intelligence in machines that are programmed to think and make rational decisions. True AI can operate in the same capacity as a human being, but this technology does not yet exist. We've all been scared, I think, seeing movies like Terminator or iRobot or insert robotic movie here. That technology doesn't exist yet. The technology that we see today is a variety of technologies that enable computers to understand what you're saying and act with a certain level of autonomy. The distinction I want to make here is that it cannot make decisions on its own. You still need to have some kind of human supervisor when you're using these systems, because it's really good at understanding what you're saying and helping you out, but it cannot make decisions for you. So this is the level of AI that we're going to be talking about today in the presentation, and this is what we're primarily seeing in small, medium enterprises that we're dealing with right now. AI has actually been around for a long time. It was first theorized back in the 1950s, and since then we've seen a number of advancements in AI, but it's only recently that we've seen it really take hold. Primarily, we can all remember November 2022 when ChatGPT came out. It was a really cool novelty. Everybody started using it, and since then we've seen it grow exponentially fast. The reason that it took this amount of time for us to see these tools being used widely are pure computing power to run these algorithms didn't exist prior to this. The financial resources were not available prior to 2014. AI was mostly academia, and then industry got a hold of it because they saw the benefit, and now the financial restrictions around that got replaced. So when you dump money into things, you see it develop a lot faster. And finally, the amount of data just wasn't available prior to this, and the accessibility of the data wasn't accessible. With the internet becoming such a component in our society, becoming high speed, and companies like Google, Facebook, Apple collecting data for decades, we now have these vast amounts of data and the accessibility to access that data that allows these algorithms to actually do something with it. So that's why we saw this trend really explode most recently. This is a model from the Singapore Computer Institute, and they developed this AI model, which I really like, which shows what we see today as a number of different models. So the overarching technology we see is artificial intelligence, which I talked about in a few slides before. That doesn't exist quite yet. In the yellow, you can see what we're going to be talking about today, which is natural language processing. That's the ability of a computer to understand human language in written and spoken form and generate contextual outputs based on that. This is our generative AI, large language models, ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, etc. Large language models, commonly used due to their versatility. The internet, the cloud-based technologies, and companies dumping the money into the research of these tools has made it very easy for small, medium enterprises to adopt AI without a significant investment in infrastructure. So this has made them particularly attractive to companies that are looking to leverage AI for growth and efficiency, and they do a very good job at doing that, and we're going to get that talked about in a later slide. So what do you need to do to prepare your organization for AI? We at IT Company believe there are 6 steps to this. The first step is identifying the objectives. AI is a really fun tool to play with, but at some point as a business, you want to know, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish with this tool? The first step is looking at your business, looking at your processes, and finding areas where AI can benefit you. Planning is a very essential step before you start implementing these tools. The second is, once you know what you want to use it for, is now assessing your environment to make sure that your environment is equipped to handle. And that can be a variety of things like computing power, licensing, the amount of usable data. Third step is ensuring that your security measures are in place. There's a couple components to this. I'm going to get into this in a couple of slides coming up. The fourth component is creating AI use policies. Your staff and your customers need to know how you're going to use AI, what the expectations are, and how you're protecting that data. And then finally, the education piece, which I broke into two because the education really is a super important part of this. AI tool is still a tool. Your staff and yourself need to be educated on how to use it properly, what to do, what not to do, to get the value out of it. And this is where we're seeing the largest amount of workflow changes happening, is once the team starts getting educated on these tools and how they're using it, starts to change how they're working. So first step, identifying objectives. What is it you're going to use it for? There's a number of things listed here. I'm going to dive down to the bottom left corner, which is general productivity. This is where we're seeing most companies using it, and it has more of the global benefit to a company, is when you're using a tool like Copilot, ChatGPT to generate content for you. These tools allow you to do 60 to 70% of the busy work of performing research and generating content. The human being can now come in and look at that data, refine it, and finalize it for actual production. I myself use Copilot every day. One of the greatest benefits I had was when I'm trying to come up with marketing content or response to an email or something that I'm unsure of, I can get Copilot to generate that for me, which gives me a starting point. So I rarely use exactly what it produced, but I do use it to get that creative spark going. So now I can draw on that and go, oh, that was a really good point. Let me expand on that, or let me go this direction. So it does a great job of doing that amount of busy work. And one thing that we've also noticed was the least technical users tend to get the greatest benefit out of using these tools. AI tools democratize the access to technology, enabling all users, regardless of tech expertise, to enhance their performance. So it really levels the playing field in your organization, as lower technical users that were previously dubious of doing certain tasks, or maybe didn't feel they had the expertise, they can now draw on tools like Copilot to help get them started. And the other reason we see them get a great benefit is it removes the bias. So it allows for a more open-minded approach. Um, people people that are already an expert in their particular job, and I think we can all relate to this. We have our way of doing things, and it works for us, and we go, okay, I'm gonna, these are my 5 steps to do it, and I know it works every time. Those might not be the most efficient steps to doing it, but because we know it works, we hang on to that, and so we get habitual in how we're performing tasks. Somebody who doesn't have that same bias starts using a tool to do the same task. They're now relying on Copilot to generate that content for them, eliminating a number of steps, and they're able to now do the same job that the expert's doing in a vastly shorter amount of time. Now, of course, the expert still as a better supervisor, and they can still pick up on the nuances of what's happening. But the point I'm trying to make is those users who are very non-technical now have the ability to play on a similar level to the experts. So we see a great benefit of them in terms of efficiency. So the next step after you've identified objectives is assessing your environment. So we're going to look at a number of things here. One of them is your infrastructure compatibility, including licensing. If you're using Google, for example, you use Google Drive to store your data, and you want to implement Microsoft Copilot, you're not going to get a very good benefit out of that because Microsoft Copilot relies on the Microsoft ecosystem. So you want to store your data in something like OneDrive to get the greatest benefit. If you're storing it in Google, it's not going to be able to reference that data in the same manner that you would expect it to. Data management is something else we want to look at, including the amount of usable, robust data. We're also going to talk about archive data, stale data, age data. These tools, they don't make decisions. They're just going to draw on whatever information you give it. So if you're using a tool like Copilot, and Copilot, by the way, the difference between that and ChatGPT is ChatGPT uses information on the web. Copilot uses information in your Microsoft account. It's going to search your emails, your OneDrive, your Teams messages. It's going to draw on all that information to create those contextual outputs. If you don't have a structured data store, and if you've got old stale data in that store, it's going to draw on everything it finds and produce content that's not relevant to what you're trying to do. So data management, looking at how you structure your data, cleaning that out, making sure that any documents that are 10 years old that are no longer in use are archived somewhere else so that these tools can't access them, becomes really important. Security, obviously very important. Data access controls need to be in place so that you're not producing information, releasing information that shouldn't be released, or providing that information to other staff members. Tech expertise, also very important. Somebody in the organization or having a partner that can help you through this journey of implementing AI, again, very important. Just like any other tool in your organization, it's a tool. It's very relevant to have somebody on staff or somebody available that can provide guidance to this tool to make sure you're getting the greatest value out of it. I think, again, we can all relate to implementing tools that maybe training wasn't there, or we just kind of jumped into it and eventually scrapped that tool because we weren't getting what we wanted out of it. Most times that comes down to we just weren't trained properly on the capabilities of that tool. Finally, the scalability, including long-term investment. If you've identified your objectives, you want to make sure that those tools you're putting in are going to scale with the growth, and AI is going to help with that growth. So you want to make sure that you can scale with it, and you also want to make sure you're budgeting for anything that you need to put in, any tasks that need to happen as you continue to use that tool. So the third component is security measures, and this one's actually broken into 2 slides because it's so very important. And I want to draw the attention to the bottom left. Just as a reminder, AI is not a decision-making tool. It will not know what employees should have access to and what they should not have access to. So if you don't have proper data controls in your organization and your staff starts using these tools, they now have opened up the ability to access information that they shouldn't have. Now, to put this in perspective, AI is not doing anything in this situation that a human can't do. It's just doing it a lot faster. Anyone in your organization, if you don't have the proper security in place, could spend time going through documents, folders, and files and finding information that maybe you don't want to have access to, but that could take days, weeks, months. AI can do that same task in a matter of seconds. So it makes it very, very easy for somebody with low technical knowledge to start finding information that they shouldn't. And an example I like to use here is salaries or employee reviews. If somebody goes in and says, hey, I want to look at John's salary, how much money did he make last year? and that data is available somewhere because permissions were in place, he's going to be able to get that data. The Copilot tool is going to produce that for him. He may not even do that maliciously. He may just ask for his own salary and say, what was my salary? What was my last performance review? And it's going to find performance review, and it might spit back everybody's performance review if you haven't had that data properly protected. So really important that you have the proper security in place before you allow these tools into your organization. The second component of this is knowing how that AI tool is going to use your data. I'm going to reference ChatGPT because it's the most well-known. The ChatGPT free version does not have any kind of built-in commercial data protection, which means anything you put into that tool now becomes part of its public domain. It's going to use that to train its model, and that data is now potentially accessible by anybody else who's using ChatGPT. So you never want to put private proprietary information into a tool like ChatGPT. The paid versions of ChatGPT, there's a Pro and Teams version. They do have the ability to keep your data from being used to train its models, but you have to opt in for that. It natively allows it to train the model. So you have to send them a request and ask them to not use it to train your model. The enterprise version does have something called commercial data protection. Microsoft Copilot for 365, and we're talking about the paid version today, not the free version that most of us have on our computers now. The paid version has commercial data protection built in, which means it does not use your data to train its model. Any data that gets input in that tool stays within that tool and gets removed after you're done using the tool. So when you're looking for an AI tool, you want to look for tools that do not do these three things. You want to make sure it does not use your data to train its models. You want to make sure it does not save your chat data, and you want to make sure it does not allow the vendor to view your data or queries. Really important to spend some time researching these tools before you use them to make sure that these things aren't happening. Let's say you're a company with patents, for example, and you're trying to create some documentation around those patents for a news release or internal documentation. If you're feeding that information into ChatGPT, there is potential that somebody could find that information on those proprietary technologies that you're looking at. So the next step is creating AI policies, and I often suggest that this might even be a first step, and I'll get into that in a second. So the internal AI policy helps to establish expectations within the organization of how AI should be used. That includes notifying management before a tool is put in so that management can approve that tool. A client-facing policy is what you put in place to notify your customers that you're using an AI tool and how you're using that tool. Referencing back to the security slide we just talked about, if you are, let's say that you're using a company that's using an AI tool, you probably want to know if they're putting the proper security protocols in place, if they're using your data. An example of this would be a marketing company that's maybe producing content for you for social media. A lot of marketing companies, are using AI tools to generate content. So you want to make sure that they're using that data responsibly, so it's not being, again, used to train the models or being shared with anybody else. And you as a customer probably want to know that they're using that to generate that content so that you can ask questions around, well, who's supervising, who's fact checking that data to make sure that it's relevant and that it's the grammar's proper and that the information is proper. So putting in a client-facing policy helps build trust and transparency with your customers so that they understand how those technologies are impacting their interactions and data. Again, this can be company specific. Some companies, they don't necessarily need to have a policy like this in place. Let's say you're a fabrication company and you're using a robotic arm to weld a seam on a pipe. As long as that seam passes inspection, then your customers probably don't care that you use the robotic arm with AI to weld it. But again, a company like a marketing company, for example, has a greater need to be transparent about that. So the reason that I said that it's important to maybe put these in as a first step is with referencing back to how many staff members are using these technologies without management knowing. Putting a policy like this in place at least lets them know that you're aware that these technologies exist and that there are rules around it. And that in itself can build the awareness for them that maybe they shouldn't be using these tools until talking to management. And my suggestion with this is to approach it in a very collaborative manner. We know the AI tool is here to stay. It's just going to become more prevalent in our industries. You don't want your staff thinking that you're against AI, because again, they're seeing the benefit of using these tools and they want to use it to do their job better. So a collaborative approach of, hey, we know AI is an important tool. We are looking at how we implement it. Before we do that, though, we have to get the company prepared. So here's a policy for everybody to sign off on, and how to use AI, and these are the rules around it. So this is a really easy step to put in place. I actually have an AI policy template that I can send to anyone who's interested. So if you want that, contact us after the presentation. I'm happy to send that to you, and you can use it in your organization. But super easy step, really important to build that internal policy and then allow your customers to know how you're using AI tools as well. So the last two steps are educating your team. Very, very important that your team is aware of two main things when they're using AI. We talked a little bit about AI not being a decision-making tool. We see two types of AI tools right now: open loop systems and closed loop systems. Open loop systems follows your instructions without checking if the data is correct, and it will keep making the same mistake over and over again. It relies heavily on your inputs to create that output. A closed loop system is going to check its work, and it's going to learn from its mistakes, getting better over time. This is more the functional AI component that we talked about earlier. With open loop systems, which are going to be your ChatGPT, your Gemini, your Copilot, it is crucial that your team members are checking their work. And this is something that I would build into my AI policy as well, that if they're using these tools, they are going in and fact checking all of the information in there, making sure it's relevant, finding the sources for that data. One thing I like about Copilot is when I research information, it will produce for me where it got that information. It will give me a direct link to the internet source where it found that info, so I can now go and read that article and decide for myself if this is fake news or if it's actual relevant article. And then I can use that when I'm presenting. So the first few slides, I had some statistics in there, and if you saw, the bottom of it had a link to where I got that information from. That was all generated by Copilot. I asked it to find that statistics for me. I cycled through and picked the ones I liked and made sure to put those references in there so that I know that that information is accurate, and the people I'm presenting it to can see where I got that information, and they can also fact check it themselves. So if there's one thing that I can put in your heads today, is if your team or you are using these tools, you have to fact check it. You cannot rely on the output that it gives you. AI is confidently incorrect, meaning if you give it a question, it produces an answer with such confidence that it's really hard to believe that it's not true. But there's been many cases. There was a case in the United States where a lawyer used ChatGPT to build his case. Nothing was correct in the case. All of the references it made were wrong. That fellow got disbarred and is no longer a lawyer because he didn't fact check that information. So you don't want something like that happening to your company if you're using these tools and producing information that's simply not correct. The second component of educating your team is prompting. AI will take your input and produce an output, and while it understands your language, it's up to you to expand on that prompt to get to the output that you want. So there's bad prompts, there's good prompts. A well thought out prompt will give you the best value out of that tool. And what we do here at IT Company is we have created a prompt library. So we had to learn how to use these tools ourselves. We're still learning how to prompt to get the proper outputs from it. But when we find prompts that work, we have a file that we store those in so that other team members can now reference that. If they're just getting started with AI or they're just not sure how to prompt the tool, they can use those as a starting point, either recycle those prompts or tailor them to their specific need. It leads to a more efficient and satisfying interaction with these technologies. And oftentimes we find, you make a prompt and you ask a really generic component like, tell me the best AI tools. And it's going to come back and give you a really general response saying, here's the top 5 AI tools. But those are going to be general tools, not specific to what you wanted to use it for. So a better prompt would be, tell me the best AI tool to help me create marketing content. That's a more specific prompt, and it's going to give you a more specific response. So learning how to prompt, having a champion on your team that understands it, that can maintain a prompt library and can help other staff members use it becomes really, really important so they get the most out of this tool. So that's it for my portion. I hope that wasn't too much information for everybody. This presentation will get sent to everybody at the end of the webinar, so you'll be able to draw upon what I've said here today if you need to reference it. I'm going to now pass it over to Dom. Dom is going to do a Copilot demo for you all so that he can showcase some of the capabilities of this tool, and then we'll get into a Q&A session after that. So take it away, Dom.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. So I'm Dom. I'm the senior technician and technology strategist and advisor at IT company. Just go ahead and share my screen, and while that sets up, I'm going to talk a little bit about, sort of get my 2 cents in on AI. So AI is revolutionizing work similarly to how other technologies like the internet transformed our work and interactions. Other examples of technological revolutions in this same vein would be printing press, mobile phones, GPS, and the increased processing power of computers. So what I have here on the screen right now is actually an article by Microsoft. It's a web page. You can go to copilot.cloud.microsoft.com, and this gives you an example of several prompts that you can use within Copilot. In this page, you can go to getting tips and tricks for effective Copilot prompts. So just building on top of what Kelly mentioned about, what are the ingredients that go into a prompt to make it the most effective? So those ingredients would be goal, context, source, and expectations. You don't have to use all of them all the time, but this is how you craft a really good prompt. Basically, what response do you want from Copilot? In this case, generating 3 to 5 bullet points. Why? So giving it the context of why you're doing these things. The source, so what information sources should Copilot focus on and use? And how should Copilot respond to best meet those expectations? So you can ask it to use a specific tone of voice or tone of language. And what are you expecting from it? Are you trying to learn from the prompt, or learn from the article that you're using Copilot to analyze? So we're going to get into the demonstration here. So I've got what I'm going to be doing is pretending that I'm an IT professional, not going to be very hard, to create a presentation on Copilot for our clients. I want this presentation to explain what Copilot is and what are some common AI models and some use cases. So I've opened up Microsoft Word here, and you can see I've got several buttons to enable Copilot or engage with Copilot. So as you can see here, I can select this icon and type in a prompt. I can use the Copilot button that's integrated into Word, or I can just go directly with Alt-I as a shortcut and write my prompt in here. So my prompt for this demonstration is going to be create a guide to help users understand Copilot usage and its time-saving benefits. Explain common AI types, including LLMs, and describe tasks Copilot can and cannot perform. So 176 characters. We're going to hit generate and see what it creates for us. So Copilot will assist in starting this process of putting together this presentation. I'm going to let it basically handle 60 to 70% of the work with the research and the formatting. My role, and I like to emphasize this, is providing context, decision-making, fact-checking, and adding my nuanced understanding and creativity to the presentation. I like to use the term supervision. You are the human supervisor for the AI tool. So Copilot's going to automatically research and format my document with headers and some subheaders. With 2,000 characters, there's a lot of room for the prompt, so you can really ask it to be specific. Now it is being a bit slow here, so what I'm going to try doing, oh, there we go. So we'll let it do its thing. So out of that 176 characters, we can see it's generating a lot of content for us. Now, this type of prompt will generate a longer response, which means it's going to require more fact-checking and reviewing from the human. Again, the important thing when using an AI assistant is to always fact-check and make sure the response is correct. You can also regenerate the response. There's a couple buttons to regenerate the response. You can edit the prompt, so you can craft it to get exactly what you're expecting, what you're looking for. Now, I'm going to pretend I did my fact-checking and did all that, so I like this. I'm going to keep it. And so far, I've got a pretty good article. Let's say I want to add to this document. Because Copilot is context aware, meaning it knows what we've originally talked about, it knows what's in this document. I can build on top of this. So let's add a section here, and let's ask it to add what are some IT challenges of integrating Copilot into a company. I'm going to hit generate, and we'll see what that creates. Okay, so a couple paragraphs. I reviewed it, I liked it. After the fact, maybe I don't like it in this format. What I can do is I can actually ask Copilot to make some changes. I can rewrite it to improve writing. This is where I can ask it to change its tone from maybe neutral to casual to professional. I can also ask it to visualize this information into a table for me. So now it's taken that information, created a table. I like that. I'll keep it. And it doesn't replace what I've already got there. So I'll have to manually go in there and remove it, but I like the table instead. What if I was more specific about in my prompt? So what if I wrote instead, what are the IT challenges of integrating Copilot into the company? Organized by high, medium, and low priority. Under each risk, list 2 potential impacts. So now it's taken all those potential challenges and also listed in bullet form those impacts. I like that. I'm going to go ahead and keep it. So as you can see, we can generate a lot of content very quickly. And now my job is to fact check for mistakes, format, dress up the document, and provide any additional context or information that I want, but Copilot didn't grab. Another thing to keep in mind you can do with Copilot. So we have a Word document open right now. You can do this in a PDF. You can do this for articles that you have open with Microsoft Edge. Microsoft Edge has a similar Copilot button that's integrated in. So I'm going to open this up here and pretending I'm someone new to this documentation, I haven't read it yet. I want a quick summary. I don't have time to go through this whole thing. I just want the key points. So I could use a prompt such as summarize this doc. Something I like to use, and that's in our prompt library, and I like to add is, and tell me what someone can learn from it. So giving it that context of someone new to this document, I want to know what I can learn from this. Go ahead and hit enter. And there you go. Nice little summary of the documentation. Like Kelly mentioned, it does provide sources to locations in the document where it does talk about these things if I want to dive in deeper. So for example, task Copilot cannot perform. I can click on any of these sources, references, and go straight to that section of the document so I can read more about it. Again, you can do this in Edge, you can do this in PDFs, you can do this to review contracts or service agreements. Lots of different use cases for doing something like this. So something I struggle with or can be quite challenging is creating a brief summary of a document, whether it's for an email or just describing what I have created. So let's try that out. Summarize this document in 1 sentence. Now it's going to parse the whole thing and say this document titled Understanding Copilot Usage gives me a nice little big sentence, but it's a nice 1 sentence summary of the entire documentation. So now I've got the information that I want for my presentation. Let's say I want to move this over to PowerPoint. So I've got PowerPoint open here. I'm just going to bring that to the front. And we're going to create a presentation from this document that I just created. There are some limitations that you will encounter with this. In my case, what I've found is I'm not able to take content that I've created and insert it into an existing PowerPoint template. So that does change the way I do this a little bit. I'll let Copilot generate the presentation with the information that I have, and then later on fix up the presentation, dress it up how I want it, add our company branding, things like that. So in PowerPoint, I'll go ahead and open the Copilot button. And it's a pre-prepared prompt. You'll see create a presentation from a file. So we'll click on that. And using the slash here, I can actually search our data stores for a file for it to reference. So the Word document I have is called demo. And we've got one here. It says, I've modified this 5 minutes ago. Normally you'd have a more descriptive title so you know exactly what you're looking for, but I've done this a couple times, so I know this is the one. Go ahead and hit enter. So this may take a little bit of time, and while it's doing that, the other things you can do with Copilot are drafting emails with tone and awareness of the whole email chain, summarizing your emails. What I've done before when I've left on vacation is I'll come back and I'll ask Copilot, hey, can you summarize all the action items or important emails from the last week while I was gone? So here we've actually finished. It's drafted 14 slides for me. You can see that the titles for the slides actually coincide with the headers in the Word documentation. Now I've got this presentation. I've let Copilot do 60 to 70% of the work. I'm going to go through fact check and dress that up for myself. So in this workflow example, I've saved tons of time just getting the information onto the page. I'm using Copilot to help me with my research and just speeding up that whole process. Like I mentioned before, you can summarize PDF documents, service agreements, contracts, articles, basically anything you can open in Microsoft Edge, you can have Copilot analyze for you. Now I'm going to step away from this a little bit and show an example of using Copilot as a research tool. So in Copilot, you can use, in Teams, there's a Copilot button that's integrated. You can use it from here. You can also open a web browser, go to office.com and go to Copilot there on the web as well. I want to point out that there is a work mode and a web mode. So work mode, what it does is it's going to prioritize the data that you have stored in SharePoint or OneDrive, in Copilot's case. With the web mode, it's going to ignore all that and do its research online. So I'm actually going to just switch over to web mode here. And I'm going to ask it, let's say I'm researching software solutions for a law firm, but I don't have any experience with law firms. I don't know what kind of software categories or solutions they use. So I'm going to have Copilot help me with this research. Now, normally you would use something like a search engine, but a search engine requires you to know at least some keywords or some baseline knowledge to get the results you're looking for. Not so much in the case with Copilot, because I'm able to use a conversation to get the information that I need. So an example here is I'm looking for a software solution for a law firm that will help them manage their day-to-day operations and manage their clients. Copilot's going to go into the internet and do a bit of research. So what it's given me here is the names of a couple different solutions: Clio, Cosmolex, MyCase. But I want to know, what category of software this is so I can kind of more refine my searches. You can see we've got some sources, so I can follow that to review this. But, following along and using a conversation for my research, I might ask it, what are these solutions called? Because I wasn't very specific, Copilot's just going to give me the names of the solutions that it found. Not very helpful. But what I can do, because Copilot is a conversation and it's context aware, what category of software do these solutions fall under? Okay, so it tells me it falls under the category of legal practice management software. Okay, so now I can use this term to further along my research. So instead of using a search engine, I'm able to conduct research through a conversation using Copilot. So I encourage everybody to give it a shot, see what prompts work best for you. It takes a bit of practice, but it is worth it. So just for a little bit of fun, I'm going to ask Copilot to create an image of a dog working as a barista in a coffee shop. And while this works, this does conclude my demo. Once we see this picture pop up, I'll pass it back over to Kelly and Andrea for our Q&A. And let's see what it does here.
Thanks, Dom. And while we're waiting for that, if anybody has questions, please put them in the Q&A chat at the top, and we'll get to those. We see one question in there now, but anything you want to ask, pop it in there, and we will answer it coming up right away.
Yeah, thanks. All right, so yeah, that concludes my demonstration. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen now, and we'll get to the Q&A.
Thanks, Dom. I hope everybody enjoyed that demo and saw some of the capabilities of what it can do. So I'm going to move into Q&A. I see one question in there now, which is, can Copilot be used in Excel? The answer is yes, it can be used in Excel, but there are some limitations with it. Any data that's in Excel needs to be in a table for Copilot to be able to reference it. So if you have just a standard document with columns and rows, Copilot will not be able to reference that data. The other limitation with using it in Excel, and I think this applies to Word also, is you have to have the autosave feature on. I haven't seen that prompt come up in Word, but anytime I try and use it in Excel, it asks me to make sure that autosave is enabled before it will actually do anything with that data. So let's see, I think we've got some more questions coming in. Actually, no, Quay, I'm not able to unmute the mic, but if you just want to type it into the chat, then we'll be happy to answer it. Are there any other questions that anybody has? And again, if there's some questions you think of after the fact, feel free to message us. I'll put my contact information up on the screen. So feel free to send us a note and let us know what questions you have, or if there's anything else you'd like to do. We also are doing assessments for companies that want to look at putting in AI, but maybe want to see what they need to do ahead of time. So give us a shout on that, and we can help with that. We have a prompt. Can you upload pictures and ask Copilot to change things? Dom, I'll let you answer that question. To my knowledge, there are some better tools out there to do image manipulation, but Dom will speak a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Copilot is more of a productivity tool that you hit the nail right on the head there, Kelly. There's more specialized AI tools from like Adobe Photoshop that can do things with photographs. So you're better off maybe looking at those more specialized tools that handle those things. Copilot, being a language learning model, is more about understanding human language and responding back with that than it is with image editing.
All right, I see Jolene asked if we can provide an AI policy template. Yes, I can provide that to you. I'll make a note and I'll send that to you. Anybody else who wants it, if you you don't have to pop in the chat, you can just send us an email or give us a call, go to our website, and we're happy to provide that to you. Okay, we got another question. What are some common pitfalls organizations face when preparing for AI integration, and how they can be avoided? So again, it's really a case-by-case basis depending on what you have set up beforehand. Doing the assessment is really important to figure out some of those issues before you implement AI so you can avoid the pitfalls. But common ones we see are not having the proper access controls in place, so that now that data that you don't want shared with certain staff is now being shared with all staff. Not understanding how to prompt the tool properly, that becomes an issue, because if it's not easy for people to use and it's not easy to adopt, they're just going to not use it, and then they're missing out on a lot of the advantages of using a tool like Copilot. So educating the team, making sure they understand how to use it, and having a champion of some kind who's available to help with that becomes super, super important. Dom, are there any other pitfalls that you can think of?
Yeah, so the more you invest into sanitizing and increasing the quality of your data, the better Copilot is going to be able to use that data. And this is quite a massive undertaking to make your data high quality. And what that means is you're removing stale data. So if you're trying to use Copilot to generate something like marketing material, well, you don't want it to use data from maybe 7 years ago. You want it to use something recent. But in order for you to do that, your data has to be very organized, whether you do it manually, which is a lot of effort, or you do it automatically, which takes a lot of effort at the beginning to set up, but it is worthwhile. So that's something to definitely consider. Another thing with that is you can kind of shortcut this depending on your size and what data and what you're wanting to do with it, what your goals and objectives are. That's another point, is really understanding what your goals and objectives are going to be with Copilot. But back to data. Yeah, sanitizing and creating good quality data. What you can do is if you're using SharePoint, is you can limit Copilot to using specific SharePoint libraries, so it's not touching all the other data. So you can kind of start fresh a little bit with moving data to that's relevant. But yeah, that's something definitely to consider is how good is your data? How old is it? How well organized is it?
Yeah, and something else that we would recommend is leadership can implement the tool. It's not an all or nothing. So if you want to test the tool out as an owner of the company, you can do that and trial it out before you push it out to the staff. That gives you a chance to familiarize yourself with the tool and maybe discover some of those pitfalls that are in there. Again, an assessment, obviously the best place to start so we can get ahead of it, but you as an owner can use that data and start asking it for information that you would not want your staff to have and see what it produces back. Not necessarily that it's going to tell you what they have access to, it's just going to show you what kind of data is there, including some of that stale data. We have another question. Can Copilot analyze Excel data and summarize a high-level report? Yes, it can do that. Again, it has to be in a table. If you're using a standard Excel document with columns and rows and the information entered into those without being in a table, then it's not going to be able to provide that information to you. We have a question. What's the recommendation of fine-tuning good prompts over time? Do you recommend leveraging an online prompt database? Yes, absolutely. Microsoft has a very powerful prompt library online that Dom was showing earlier that you can use. That's to help you get started. For prompts specific to your organization, I recommend having that file, a prompt library, and fine-tuning that. Every time you make a query, if it's not giving you the output that you want, ask it the same question in a different way, or because it's contextual, you can ask a follow-up question, and that might give you a more specific answer. From that, you can take those multiple questions and build one new prompt, so you're doing a one-time prompt instead of multiple. And if that works, store it in your prompt library.
That's right. Yeah, I'll just add one little thing to that is Copilot AI, they're all very dynamic tools. Sometimes you'll use one prompt and get a different response the second time. So documenting your prompts, making them specific, building them up over time to be more specific to what you're looking for. Don't be surprised if you get a different response, and don't be afraid to do the same prompt again just to get a different type of response, and then use the information you get to form what you're actually looking for.
And just like anything, riding a bike, we get better over time. So the more you use it, I remember when I first started using it, I was getting really bad outputs, and it was frustrating. But working with other team members here who gave me some advisement on different prompts, talking to other people who were using the tool, and checking those online prompt libraries really helped me refine it. And now it's becoming sort of second nature, where I can fast forward to get the information that I want. We have another question: Is there a reliable prompt online source you would recommend? Dom, can you put the Copilot library in the chat as a response to that question?
Sure thing, yeah. And basically, just look, right? There's YouTube videos, there's articles out there. People are sharing their prompts, and the more you learn, the more you practice, the better you are gonna get with prompting.
Yeah, and just to note, these tools are getting more advanced over time, and they're getting better and better at understanding our queries. So prompt library is a great place to start, but as time goes by, they're giving us better outputs than they were before. We have another question: How are AI tools such as ChatGPT compared to Copilot? So ChatGPT is more of a web-based tool, where the free version at least is going to use web data, whereas Copilot is going to integrate with your Microsoft account. It's going to check your emails, your Teams, your OneDrive, anything that your Microsoft login has access to. It's going to be able to produce data based on that. For example, I did a prompt a few weeks ago where I wanted to create a marketing piece, and so I asked ChatGPT, how can or why would a company want to work with IT company? And it referenced my previous marketing material that I had made, my emails, my messages back and forth to the staff, and it put together a very solid statement of why companies would want to work with IT company, very specific to what we do here and to our mentality. So worked really well grabbing the internal data. other tools, Gemini is Google's tool. There's a ton out there. It really, when we're talking about comparison, it really depends on how your organization is set up now. If you're using the Google ecosystem, then the Microsoft Copilot isn't going to work that great for you unless you migrate over to Microsoft and then start using the Microsoft tool. So you're going to get out of it depending on what your workflow and how your company works right now. Very, very case by case, depending on how you're currently doing things. And everyone has a preference. Like some people prefer ChatGPT. I myself prefer Copilot. Yeah, so it really comes down to what's going to work best for your organization.
Yeah, and just to build on top of that, a lot of these LLMs are using the same technology in the background. So you're getting all the same capabilities and things. It's what these companies then do to integrate that with their solutions. So like you said, Google Gemini integrates into Google Workspace. Microsoft Copilot integrates into the Microsoft environment.
We have a question. I don't think we can see the chat or the questions. Maybe I'm just not in the right place. So at the top of your Teams window, you should see a number of icons. You'll see chat and you'll see one called Q&A. If you click into that, you should be able to see it. Is anyone else having that issue? Dom put the Copilot prompt gallery in there as a chat. If someone can maybe give that a thumbs up if they can see it. And if we don't get it, then I will just, I'll send that out to the attendants after the presentation so you guys all have that. I did see a thumbs up come in, so okay, good. So people can see it. Perfect. So that Copilot prompt gallery is linked in there. That's a good place to start. I know we're doing a lot of talk on Copilot today. We are a Microsoft shop, so we're a little bit biased on the tool. We use the Microsoft ecosystem. Works very well for us. I'll reference that back to other tools like ChatGPT. The Microsoft suite is very conducive to doing business and being efficient in business. There are a lot of similarities between tools like Microsoft and Google. We just find for what we do and for how our business works, Microsoft is the best fit for us. So again, it really comes down to how your business is working and what route you want to go. I encourage you, do your research on the tools, reference those items of, is it going to save your data in the chat? Is it going to use your data to train its model? Make sure you understand how that tool is working before you implement it in your organization. Okay, I don't see any other questions. We have 3 minutes left, so probably a good time. Oh, hold on, one came in. Is Copilot free included with MS Office 365? Yes, so there is a Copilot free version. That's going to reference data on the web. It's not going to be able to reference your internal company data. What you saw today in the demo uses the Copilot paid version. So the cost on that annually is about $488 Canadian, which works out to about $40 a month. I think that you can easily see the benefit of paying that if you look at the time savings. So the example that Dom gave, he produced that document, produced the presentation. That probably would have taken me 4 to 5 hours to do if I did it all manually, maybe even a full day. He was able to do that same thing in less than 15 minutes. So if you look at the time savings there, that the $40 a month becomes actually quite reasonable. And that's just one example. If you multiply that by the entire month of tasks that you're automating, it starts to become really valuable to do the paid version. ChatGPT also has a paid version that you can use. We didn't demo that today. Admittedly, we don't know a ton about how that one works in comparison to the Copilot. We just really wanted to showcase some of the abilities. And by the way, we just scratched the surface of the capabilities of Copilot today. There's so much more that you can do with it. As Dom said, there's YouTube videos out there that you can watch with people using this tool, and you can see some examples of how they're doing it. But a lot that you can get out of these tools. Okay, I think that's all we have. So we're going to go ahead. Oh, we got a question. $480 per user per year. Yes, $480 per user per year. You can pay that monthly, or you can pay it all up front annually. Okay, thanks everybody for attending. Really appreciate y'all being here. I hope it was helpful and you got a lot of good information out of it. Again, if you have any additional questions or want any kind of help with your AI journey, please feel free to contact us at the information on the screen. If you want that template for the AI policy, please send us an email, give us a call. Happy to chat about it, and available for any other questions that you might have. Thanks everybody, and have a great weekend.